The storm rolled across the Montana plains like a wounded beast, snarling with thunder that crawled across the sky. In the middle of that wild storm stood Clara Jenkins, coat torn, hair plastered to her cheeks, breath shaking, as she shouted into the rain at the only man who had ever broken her heart. "I will have your baby, whether you want to be part of it or not," she cried, her voice trembling but fierce. Eli McCade, the rugged rancher who had once loved her more than the land under his boots, looked at her with an expression she had never seen before: fear. Clara had spent her whole life running, from expectations, from pain, from the small town that whispered too loudly. At 17 she had left without looking back, chasing big dreams and bigger cities. She thought she'd escaped the sleepy world of cattle and dust, the heavy silence between her and Eli, the boy who loved her but never asked her to stay. She waited for him to chase her. He never did. That wound carried her for years, until everything else in her life shattered. A relationship built on promises had turned cruel. A man she once trusted left her pregnant and alone, their future collapsing overnight. And so she ran again, but this time back to the one place she swore she'd never return to. Eli had changed, but not in the way she feared. The boy she once knew was gone. In his place stood a man carved out of hard work, sunburn, and loneliness. He ran the Double M Ranch alone now, shoulders broad with responsibility, eyes quiet and tired. When Clara appeared at his gate after 10 long years, he didn't slam the door. He didn't ask why she'd come back. He simply looked at her like he was trying to piece her back together with his eyes. When she finally whispered that she was pregnant with someone else's child, his face didn't twist with anger. It softened, not with pity, but with understanding she hadn't known she desperately needed. "You're coming to the ranch," he said, as if that were the most natural thing in the world. She tried to argue, but Eli's voice carried the calm certainty of a man who never made a promise he wouldn't keep. And just like that, Clara found herself back in the world she'd left behind. Life on the ranch wrapped around her slowly, like a warm blanket after a long winter. Mornings began with the smell of coffee and distant whinnies of horses. Evenings ended with stars spread like spilled sugar across the sky. Eli didn't hover over her. He didn't treat her like she was fragile or broken. And that was exactly what began to heal her. He teased her the way he used to, challenged her, pushed her to help with small chores she could manage, laughed with her in quiet moments. Yet beneath the easy smiles was a depth of feeling neither dared to name. But nights were different. Nights were when memories crept through cracks she tried to seal. She'd hear Eli outside her room, hesitating like he wanted to knock but didn't. Sometimes she would catch him watching her, his gaze softening as she rubbed her belly with absent tenderness. It was Eli, not the child's father, who held her steady when waves of doubt threatened to swallow her. And one night, unable to contain the truth any longer, he said quietly, "If you'd let me, I'd help you raise that baby." The past, however, has a way of showing up uninvited. James Faulkner, the man who abandoned her, arrived at the ranch one unforgiving afternoon. He sat tall on his horse, arrogance dripping like poison. He declared he'd changed his mind, that he wanted the baby after all, wanted Clara to hand the child over and walk away. "It's cleaner this way," he said with the coldness of a man who saw people as possessions. When he reached for her arm, something inside Clara snapped. Before she could even react, Eli was there, faster, fiercer, fueled by a decade of love and loss. His punch dropped James into the dirt before the man could speak again. And when the sheriff hauled James away for threats and trespassing, Clara felt the air return to her lungs for the first time in months. Months later, as snow clung to the distant mountain peaks, Clara went into labor. Eli never left her side, not for water, not for rest, not even when exhaustion dragged at his eyes. When their baby girl entered the world, small and wailing and impossibly precious, Clara saw Eli crumble in the most beautiful way. He held the child with trembling hands, whispering to her like she was the miracle he'd prayed for without knowing it. In that moment Clara realized something she'd been too afraid to admit: Eli had always been home. Not the ranch, not the land, him. "I want you in her life," she said softly. He looked up at her, emotions raw in his eyes. "Clara, I want both of you in mine." Slowly, gently, life wove the three of them together. Long days turned to weeks filled with laughter, sleepless nights, small victories, and quiet mornings that felt like promises. Clara no longer felt like the girl who ran, She felt like the woman who finally stopped, who finally breathed, who finally let herself be loved. And one evening, with her daughter in her arms and the sun melting behind the hills, she turned to Eli and whispered, "I want to stay. Not because I must. Because I choose you." He stepped closer, touched her cheek like she was the most fragile miracle in the world, and said, "Then I'll spend my life making sure you never feel alone again." Clara rebuilt her world with the man she once left behind, and Eli learned that sometimes love returns in a way that's stronger, braver, and truer than before. And as their daughter grew in the vast Montana sky, their story became one the whole town whispered about, not because it was perfect, but because it carried a truth everyone understood deep down.